Good evening. Evening, everybody, and welcome. I hope everybody can hear me. If I can get maybe a reaction, if everybody can hear me. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much. Let's give it a couple of minutes. We'll start at 7 p.m. Thank you, Adrian. So you can see the slideshow. I'm excited for tonight. I have quite some value to share with you. And if you guys interact and react, I'll be sharing some more. So please feel free to interact and react. I'll also have some questions at the end. I think you should be able to type in the chat box. And if you have questions, I'll answer them at the end. Thanks, Adrian. Thank you so much. So just as okay, there's 2 minutes, but everybody can see just as a confirmation, the Debt Slayer unleash in your inner financial warrior. Thank you, CH. I presume that I might know CH. You cannot hide from me with acronyms. I do know him. I do know. So please, CH, if I do say something, and because I know you're in this field of some of the things I will discuss, please let me know if I'm incorrect. Lorenzo, welcome. We are starting in say 1 minute. We'll start in 1 minute. I will be recording, but I'm thinking, and you can give me some guidance if you want me to share this with you at the end, if you found it valuable. So it is in English, but I am Afrikaans, so I can always translate if you have questions in Afrikaans. But unfortunately, I only know English and Afrikaans and a bit of German. Let's see. Okay, let's start. You are here and on time. Thank you, everybody, for joining my live webinar. It's about the two-pot retirement system mostly, but there's also some info on why I want you to get out of debt, because I've realized in my profession why most people are struggling nowadays. So welcome to the session. Please interact. The more you interact, the more value I will provide. So just a disclaimer before we start. This is not financial advice. I can only give advice if I take your personal situation and goals into account. So if you want me to give you advice, you need to make an appointment and then I can discuss it personally. So I will be talking overall and I'll give you some facts, but don't take this as advice. So just an outline of what this will be about. So the first part will be about the problem and what problem is keeping us poor and why I want you guys to get out of debt and as much people as possible. The second part will be about the GPF and the two-pot retirement system and what's going to happen on the 1st of September 2024. Now, the GPF works a bit different from other pension funds, and that's why I decided to also include the GPF. Part 3 will be the solution. What can we do about this? And the final session will be questions and answers. Sorry, so feel free in the chat box to ask any questions, and I will be answering them at the end of our session. I will be staying, I made available 2 hours time, so I'll even stay longer. I'll answer each and every question that we do receive from tonight. I will make sure I answer all the questions. So where my journey began. So in October 2007, I had an accident where I almost lost my fingers in a work-related accident. Now, those of you who know me know my one hand looks worse than the other hand because of this accident. But luckily, this accident led me to start looking for different opportunities because I realized if I was going to work in this dangerous environment, it wasn't going to be good for me. So I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki and I started looking for answers. But I was also determined at that time not to make any debt because I received a good income. But I realized if I bought myself a new vehicle, I'd have a payment that I need to adhere to or pay each and every month, which meant I couldn't look for a different job because I was working 12-hour shifts and weekends, but I didn't want to work that way the rest of my life. So I realized if I made debt, I had to stay at this job for the rest of my life, or at least until I paid off my car. But I soon realized that I had to make debt if I wanted to get out of the system. And this is where I started my journey and to become, and well, I'm currently a financial advisor when I can give advice regarding financial matters. Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I also want to ask everybody just to make a reaction or chat if you cannot hear me, if I'm not picking up, that I'm not getting through to you guys. So Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I want you to remember this. Now, I want you to understand what thinking created the problem that we are in. I'm not sure how many of you know that the South African Reserve Bank has private shareholders. And the South African Reserve Bank, they print money for banks. So the banks does not have any money on them. They ask for the South African Reserve Bank to give them money. But the South African Reserve Bank does not have the money. They print the money. And what the bank needs to provide the South African Reserve Bank is an application for a loan. So they need to provide proof that the clients, me and you, can make a loan and afford that loan. So once you apply for, say, R1 million loan, the bank takes that info and shows the South African Reserve Bank that I have one clients that qualify for R1 million. Please pay me R1 million so I can borrow or lend it to the client. But the criteria for gaining access or to qualify for the loan is you need a high as possible income. So the more income you receive, the more loan you'll qualify for, which means the more loan or the more money so the South African Reserve Bank will print and give to the bank. Now, who benefits in that scenario? The South African Reserve Bank benefits most, because the higher your income is, the more loan you'll borrow, the more money you'll borrow, and the more interest they'll receive from the bank. And that is why they focus on us getting higher education. Because if you get higher education, you can earn a bigger salary. If you have a bigger salary, you qualify for more loan from the bank or for more money from the bank. And so the SARB, or the South African Reserve Bank, benefits all the way. So it's in their interest to have clients or people who earn as much as possible. But did you know the South African Reserve Bank also borrows money to the government? And the government also wants us to have a higher income, because if we have more income, there's more tax that you'll have to pay. So this whole system that is creating this problem wants us to study more, earn more, so that we can either have more loans to pay the South African Reserve Bank or pay more tax. That also benefits the South African Reserve Bank, because the money that the government spends on roads is normally money that is borrowed. Now, this won't be taught in schools. And why do you think they don't teach you this processes in schools? And they are the ones that provide us with the solution to our problems. But I'll show you how we can circumvent that and go around that. So firstly, I want to show you a calculation. Why only 6% of people in South Africa can retire comfortably. So Ruth White is 30 years old and is frustrated with the ever-rising cost of living. She's fed up from living paycheck to paycheck. So Ruth decides she wants to retire in 10 years' time and spend her free time with her family and also start the business she's always wanted. Now, the problem, I want to show you what they've created, and the solution that they provide is you cannot retire unless you have saved enough or you have to work longer. So let me provide you with the calculation. Just let me know, can you see the calculation? Increase the size. Just by a reaction. Okay, thank you, Cecil. So let's look at a calculation and why it's important to be able to do the calculation. So Ruth wants to earn 50,000 Rand, but we need to take into account the tax, right? So she is at an average tax rate of 25%. She's currently 30 years old. So at 40, she wants to retire. And at age 80 is the age that we presume that she will live to. So her life expectancy is 40 years. Within 10 years' time, she needs to retire. Then she only lives 40 years. So we need to provide enough money for her for the next 40 years. The inflation rate over her period is 6%. Now, if she wants to earn 50,000 after tax, she'll need to earn 66,000 Rand as an income. So after tax, she has 50,000 Rand. But within 10 years' time, if she wants to have the same amount of money or the same value of money, she'll need to have 119,000 Rand, which means in 10 years' time, 50,000 Rand is worth, or 119,000 Rand is worth 50,000 Rand. Does everybody get that? So because of inflation, the value of our money decreases, which means you will need to have, or Ruth needs to have 120,000 Rand if she wants to have the same value as what it is today, 50,000 Rand. Now their solution, if you want to retire with that amount of money, you'll need to save 250,000 Rand per month if your growth is 12%. And you can see this is not possible for Ruth because Ruth does not earn 250,000 Rand. So their solution is you'll either need to work longer or you cannot retire. And that is the solution that they have provided. But if you want to, and this is the calculation, the second one. So if you want to apply a solution, if you want to find out, but how can I retire or how can Ruth retire within the next 10 years, she'll need to take responsibility, because she'll need to work out or calculate what I need to do in order to retire. So this is the calculation that I have done. So if Ruth wants 50,000 Rand or 66,000 Rand as an income, she'll need 8 million today. But she does not have 8 million. So otherwise put, if you have an 8 million today and you invest that 8 million and you get a net yield of 10%, you'll have a 66,000 Rand income before tax. After tax, you'll have 50,000 Rand. But Ruth does not have an 8 million, she only has a 1,000 Rand. So if she can save 1,000 Rand per month, she'll need to grow that money by 69%. And if she is able to grow that money at 69%, she'll have 14 million within the next 10 years, and then she can retire with that 120,000 Rand or 66,000 Rand today. So I want you guys to understand this calculation, because this is Ruth's personal growth rate. Unless she can get an investment that has a growth rate of 69 or more, she won't be able to retire within the next 10 years. And this is an important number to understand which investments are suiting my needs when it comes to retirement. So if Ruth only has 1,000 Rand and she wants to retire within 10 years, all her investment that she makes must give her a growth of 69%. Otherwise, she won't be able to retire. I hope you guys understand that, but I'll get back to that a bit later. So important, if one does not do that calculation, how would you know if your investment is working for you and getting you closer to your goal or not? Unless you do the calculation, you won't know if you are doing what is right or not. So another reason why we don't get ahead, I did some calculations on 4 vehicles. So it's a BMW, a Polo, a Opel, and a Toyota. And let's look at the financial side of these vehicles. Let's assume we have a 70,000 Rand and the petrol price is 25 Rand a liter, and we travel, say, 2,000 kilometers a month, and our loan term is 6 years with a 15% interest rate. Now, a lot of times clients tell me, but maintenance is the most expensive thing, and that's why they like to purchase or upgrade to a newer vehicle. But let's take a look at what the finances show us. So this BMW costs 870,000 Rand, the Polo 300,000 Rand, and the Opel 140, and the Toyota 70,000 Rand. So once we put down our deposit, of course our Toyota won't have any monthly repayment because we paid it in cash. But all the other vehicles, the BMW will cost us 16,000 Rand per month, and the Volkswagen 4,800, and the Opel Astra 1,480. The newer vehicles also has a higher depreciation rate. So 20% for the BMW, 15, 10, and 5. And of course, our fuel economy is higher with the older vehicles normally, depending on the size of the engine, of course. But maintenance is normally the bigger expense for the older vehicles, right? And there I've added the values. But the true biggest expense, once you do the calculation, and why we don't get ahead, but we don't understand why, is because the depreciation is the biggest expense when it comes to especially new vehicles. So as you see, I've calculated on the first vehicle, I'm losing 166,000 Rand as soon as I drive that vehicle out of the showroom. 45 for the next, 14 for the next, and 3,500 for the last one. There's also finance cost involved, and there it's 84,000 Rand for the BMW. And you also need to take out insurance for your vehicle, and that's another 10,000 Rand, and that's per year. So in total, the first portion of money that you are running out of your pocket is 260,000 Rand. That is already expenditure in your life. But say, for instance, you want to sell your vehicle after the first year. So after the first year, your BMW still owe 675,000 Rand. But your car value is only 664,000 Rand. But we need to remember you also paid payments for that first year, and that equals 192,000 Rand, which means the total we've spent on the car, or the total expenses, equates to 1.1 million, which means we're in a loss of 466,000 Rand, which is why we cannot get ahead, because we do not know, or we do not do the calculation. So the problem is we cannot do the calculation, and we believe the system, or the people who created the problem, because who do you think benefits from believing that maintenance is expensive? The car dealerships benefit because you will purchase a new vehicle. The banks benefit because you'll have to take out a new loan. So the problem is we cannot do the calculation, and because of this, we have too much debt, and it prevents us from being able to retire comfortably. So let's get into the GPF and a defined benefit fund and a defined contribution fund. So the next section is for people that have the GPF as their pension fund, and this will assist when it comes to the two-pot retirement understanding. So the GPF is a defined benefit fund. Members make contributions toward one fund, and the value of the benefits are determined by your pensionable years of service, and if you are a uniformed member of the public service or not. A defined contribution fund is where the private companies invest in. So it is where your employer and the employee makes regular contributions to the fund. The pension fund value is based on contributions and investment performance of the fund, and every member has a separate fund. Example is a retirement annuity, a pension fund, or a provident fund. So the GPF calculation works as follows. So for GPF members, how much pension they receive is only determined by the amount of years of service that you have and the average salary of your last 2 years before you retire. And they do a calculation with a factor, and they determine what your GPF fund benefits are. So Jane Doe, and we'll do an example to show you what your pension will look like if you earn 350,000 Rand and you have a year service of 30. So if you decide to resign at retirement, your cash resignation benefit will be 2.4 million Rand. Now, just a tip, if you want to increase your pension benefits or your cash resignation benefit or any of your benefits, you just need to ensure that your income before you retire increases. So if you can get a better position, you get a higher income, all of a sudden your pension will increase significantly, because they only calculate the number of years of service and your average salary. But I wouldn't suggest that Jane resign, because the tax she'll pay if she takes all her money will be 576,000 Rand, 845. So she shouldn't resign, because that is the amount that she'll pay on tax. What happens when Jane retires? So she doesn't decide to resign, but she decides to retire. So this is the default option. So on normal retirement, age 60, she will receive a once-off lump sum of 705,600 Rand. And her income will be 15,939 Rand. If she decides to retire at age 55, her lump sum will be 470,000 Rand and her income is 10,000 Rand. Now I can calculate this benefits because they only look at how long you've worked, your years of service, and your salary. I am able to calculate, and you can see the difference between 5 years of retiring early. And it's important to understand, because this will affect also the two-pot. The difference in lump sum is 235,000 Rand and the difference in income is 5,600 Rand. Now this is what is called the default option. Default option, you'll get 705,000 Rand and 15,000 as an income. But you can decide to take a reduced lump sum. Instead of 705,000, you take a lump sum of 614,000 Rand. But your income will stay the same. You can also decide to take a reduced income. Your lump sum will stay 705,000 Rand, but your income will decrease to 15,300. Now, why would you take a 75% option? See, when you stay on the 50% option, you leave your spouse with 50% of your pension, meaning your spouse will receive 7,900 Rand per month when you pass away. If you take one of the other options, the reduced lump sum option, you will leave your spouse with 11,900 Rand if you should pass away. Or if you take the reduced income, you leave your spouse with 11,500. So the different options means if you decide to take another option, instead of the 50%, you leave your spouse with more income when you pass away or when you die. And that's the reason why you would take another 75% option. Another problem that I've realized is what is called the 5-year rule or the 5-year balance. So if a pensioner dies within 5 years of retiring, and this is within the GPF, or being discharged, the GPF will pay the balance of the retirement to the beneficiaries. Otherwise, if I can put it otherwise, the GPF will only pay an additional lump sum if you pass away within 5 years of retirement or discharge. Now let's give you an example. So in Jane Stowe's case, if she dies within the first year, her beneficiaries, children and spouse, will get a 950,000 Rand lump sum once off if she dies within that first year. And that is the last lump sum that she'll receive. If she dies within year 2, it decreases to 763,000 Rand. If she dies within year 5, that will be the last year that she'll receive a lump sum of 190,000 Rand, 900 Rand to the family, kids and spouse. But if Jane Doe passes away after 5 years, so she's retired and she dies after 5 years, there's no lump sum paid to beneficiaries, only the income. Only an income will be received by the spouse. So if you don't have a spouse and you pass away in year 6, there's no money that gets paid to any children. Now your other options, and all of us has this option at retirement, you can either take your money into a financial institution. So if you do that, you can transfer your total resignation amount of 2.4 million, which means you'll receive 1/3 of 810,000 Rand. Your 2/3 that is left will be 1.6 million, and from the 2/3 you will receive a monthly income. Now the legislation or the law says you cannot withdraw more than 2.5% and you cannot withdraw more than 17.5%. Now 2.5% for Jane Doe is too little because he'll only receive 3,378 Rand. 17.5% equals 23,652 Rand. And what the GPF provides is 15,900. If we take the same amount of income what the GPF does, she'll take in percentage 11.79% to be equal to what the GPF will give you as an income. Now my suggestion and my advice would be not to take more than 4%, but that's only 5,406 Rand. But why do I not advise that Jane does this? See, when you have 1.6 million and you withdraw 10%, if you look on the left side, the only way you can keep this 1.6 million at that amount is if your growth is also 10%. So if you have 1.6 million apples and you eat 10, you need to add 10 apples to keep it at 1.6 million. Now what happens if you withdraw the maximum amount 17.5. If you withdraw the maximum amount, 17.5, and the growth is 5%, your capital will tend to 0. Even if you withdrew 10% and your growth is 5%, your capital will tend to 0, which means your capital will be depleted before you die. And what's worse is here you can see over a 5-year period some of the worst performing unit trust funds. You can see minus 13.7, minus 13.7. There's a possibility that your funds can grow negative or can fall in value because we don't have any guarantees and no company has a guarantee on the growth that you'll receive. So this is the risk that you are taking, which means your capital will deplete even quicker. And what about the things you haven't even thought about? Is your medical aid subsidy, your leave days will not be paid out if you resign or move over to a company, your funeral cover you lose. You won't have increases because your pension within the GPF also has increases, and you lose your spouse's pension and your child's pension. So the solution to this is personal, but the quicker you put it in place, the better it will be. Because you need to take into account your goals and your current situation in order for me to calculate how can you solve the problem of staying with a GPF that provides you an income for life. Where is that? It provides you with this income for life, but to not suffer the consequences of not leaving anything to your family after 5 years from your pension. So there is a way to cover for your pension or to ensure that your pension pays out even if you stay within the GPF. But as I said, this is a very personal situation or calculation, and I need to do that on an individual basis. And I'll give you the opportunity to make an appointment should you like me to cover or explain that to you in more detail and take your situation into account. So here we come to the two-pot retirement system that's starting in a couple of days, the 1st of September 2024. So the two-pot system is a proposed change to South Africa's retirement savings structure that aims to enhance financial security and promote long-term retirement savings. So although it's called the two-pot system, I want you to understand that there are actually 3 pots, but it involves dividing your contributions into 2 pots. But the third pot is what I also call the old money, or the money that you currently have, and that will be called the vested pot. So the 3 pots is a savings pot, and that pot is for lump sum at retirement. If you resign, you can access your savings pot, and if there's an emergency, you can access your savings pot. Then we have a vested pot for seeding and creating liquidity in your savings pot. And we have a retirement pot for funding your income at retirement. Now, that retirement pot links to the portion of the 2/3 that I explained here that you will use to provide an income at retirement. Important, the savings pot can be accessed before retirement if needed, while the retirement pot will be preserved until retirement date. So from the 1st of September, your contributions will be split as follows. So 1/3 will go into a savings pot. And you'll see I didn't add a lid to the savings pot, which means you can access your savings pot. Your 2/3 will be added to a retirement pot. And there's a lid. I don't know if it's stripe cooking or whatever is cooking, but you can only access that when you are at age of retirement at 55. But it's important to remember this is only the contributions. This is for the contributions. And people get confused and feel that like all of their money will be in one of these 2 pots. But there's also a third pot. So will my current pension be affected? So your current pension fund will turn into the vested pot. So all retirement savings and interest accrued up to the 1st of September, so the day before, will not be affected by this proposed rules. So you do not have to resign before the 1st of September because you can always access the vested pot if you resign. It doesn't matter if you resign today or if you resign within 5 or 10 years' time. So resigning after the 1st of September will give you access to the vested pot. Because there's nothing in your savings pot when you start come 1st of September, they will use 10% from your current fund, call it old money, call it vested pot, and they will seed the savings pot, 10% of your current vested pot. But there is a cap of 30,000 Rand. An example would be if a member has 200,000 Rand in his pension fund currently, the seed capital will be 10% of the 200,000 Rand, and that equals 20,000 Rand will be transferred to his savings pot. If a member with 500,000 Rand fund value, the seed capital will be 10%, which is 50,000 Rand, but because of the cap, only 30,000 will be transferred to his or her savings pot. Now, the seed capital is calculated at 10%, but it's 30,000 is also once off, so it won't happen yearly. It's once off come 1st of September, and then it's done. GPF members must remember that their seeding capital will be calculated by their pensionable service, which means if they withdraw from their savings pot, their years of service will decrease. And I make it a very important slide. So if you access your savings pot, you will affect your pensionable service, which means you will have less years of service, which will affect your pension ultimately. And it's so important because some members might have less than 10 years service and you have more benefits when you have 10 years service or more. So it's important that you understand the effects and that you have calculated what will happen if I do take my pension or my savings portion. So just a recap, your savings pot, you can access your savings pot only once a year, and it has to be at minimum 2,000 Rand. Your savings pot is taxed as income as per your marginal tax rate, and I'll show you how later how you can pay 0% tax on your withdrawals from your savings pot. But there is tax involved, and you will be taxed as per your marginal tax rate. In caution, I've said if you have accessed all your savings pot before retirement, you will have no lump sum unless you have a vested pot, because on your vested pot you can still access that portion of lump sum. But otherwise, you won't have a lump sum if you only have a savings and a retirement pot. So everybody that starts working from 1st of September, they will not have a vested pot. And the GPF members, please remember that you will affect your pensionable service if you access the savings pot. The vested pot, also think about it as your old money or your current pension. So your current fund will become this vested pot. 10% of this will be transferred to your savings pot capped at 30,000 Rand, and all retirement savings and interest will not be affected by these rules, which means if you resign, you can still access your whole vested pot. So only from this pot can you receive a lump sum if you don't have a lump sum in your savings pot. The retirement pot can only be accessed at retirement, and when you resign, you can only access your savings pot. The retirement pot is to be used for an income at retirement. So feel free if you have any questions so far that you are willing, you are able to ask me if there's any uncertainty. So the only way, unfortunately, to get all your money out of your retirement pot, because understand from the 1st of September, all your contributions, all the money that you pay into your retirement pot will not be accessible until the age of 55. The other option that you do have, and the only option when they will give you access to that pot, is either on death or on disability. I think and I believe they might be able to provide you with your retirement pot if the value of the retirement pot is so low that no income or no income that's good enough can be provided to you. So say for instance your retirement pot is only 100,000 rand or 50,000 rand, but we aren't sure of the values yet, but they might be able to provide you with a full amount if it's less than a certain amount. So how can you legally pay 0% tax? So I'm going to show you some calculations on how you can pay 0% tax on withdrawals from the two pot. It's something that you need to structure and you need to calculate in order to gain that 0% tax. So if you earn less than the threshold or than the tax threshold, if anybody earns less than the tax threshold, depending on your age, you will pay 0% tax. This means if you did not have an income, you don't pay tax, or if your total income for the tax year is less than your tax threshold, you will not pay tax on your money or on your withdrawal. So let me show you a calculation. Let me show you what I mean. Thank you for the question. I'll answer Byron at the end if I don't answer it with my slide. Okay, so just as a fun to know, interesting to know. So these are the tax thresholds. So depending on your age, if you are 64 and below, you don't pay tax if you earn 95,750. If you are between 65 and 75, you won't pay tax if you earn 148,000 or below. And if you are 75 or over, you won't pay tax if you earn 165,000. So the first thing you can do if you are currently 64 and you pay tax, you can wait until next year and you might not pay tax and then do a withdrawal. But let me show you what I mean, how you can pay 0% tax. So how tax works, they calculate your tax for an annual tax year from March to Feb of the next year. That's how they determine the tax year. So if you earn 360,000 Rand or 30,000 Rand per month, your tax rate, your average tax rate is 16%, which means you pay approximately, or you do pay 4,783 Rand in tax. But if you make a withdrawal from your two-pot retirement savings, and if that withdrawal is 30,000 Rand, your total income is not 360, which they taxed you on. Your total income will be 390, which moves you to a 17% average tax rate, which means they need to deduct, SARS need to deduct 8,775 Rand in order to satisfy your tax requirement. So it'll increase your income, and because your income increase, your tax bracket or your tax rate increase, and therefore you need to pay more tax. But if you didn't receive an income, or if you receive, say, you resigned halfway, because they calculate your tax for the full year, if you resigned and you only earned, say, 60,000 Rand. Oops, that's not correct. I need to make this 5,000 Rand per month. So say you earn 60,000 Rand for the year because you resigned and you only had a couple of months of salary, and now you withdraw your 30,000 Rand. You'll see there'll be no tax because you are below the tax threshold. In this case, the person is 33 years of age. Same if you didn't earn anything and you do your withdrawal from your two-pot retirement system, they won't charge you tax because it is charged at your marginal tax rate. So with a bit of planning and structure, you are able to get a 0% tax if you structure and plan it correctly. If you resign and you take the lump sum, will it affect your marginal tax rate? So if you resign, right? If you resign and you take the lump sum, So if you take your lump sum at resignation, you will be taxed, but according to the withdrawal tax tables. So this is if you withdraw some of the money for an emergency, then this tax plays a role, Byron. So if you withdraw it while you're working for an emergency, they'll tax it at your marginal tax rate. But if you resign and you take that vested pot, because you cannot access the vested pot, if you take the vested and you take the savings pot, they'll see it as a withdrawal from your pension fund and you will pay withdrawal tax rates. And I'll show it to you quickly. Show you the SARS with. So this is the current, I hope you can see, this is the current tax rates for withdrawal benefits. So you won't get taxed on your first 27,000, but above and beyond, you'll get taxed 18% depending on the amount that you withdraw. So if you resign, they use these tables. If you use it for an emergency, they'll use the marginal rate. So how can you increase your wealth and retire early? What are the two ways you can use to retire early? So you can either pay off all your debt, and I'll show you why it's important, or you can take responsibility and achieve a higher growth. So first, let me show you what the impact of debt really is in our lives. Yeah. So say you have a bond, and your bond, you pay 12.75% interest, and it's a 30-year bond. If you pay that over the 30 years, you pay 3.9 million total costs, interest included. So you only purchase a property for 1 million, but in total you pay almost 3.9 million rand. And what I am going to show you is why it's important to pay off this debt as quick as possible. And I'll give you some tips on how you can do that. So if you pay off this debt as quick as possible, you'll have a surplus of 10,866 rand, because currently this is your monthly repayment. If you didn't have that debt, you'd have a 10,800 rand in your bank account each month that you don't have to pay to the bank. So just remember that. Here's a calculation, retirement. So if you remember the Ruth's calculation of 69% that I gave to you in the beginning, you either have to get an investment that has this amount of growth, which is possible by taking responsibility, or you need to increase what you pay per month on an investment. So if you can pay off all your debt, and all your debt is 10,000 rand, and you want to retire in 10 years time, you'll only need to get an investment growth of 39,000 rand. So the more and the less you pay on debt, the easier it'll become to get the growth rate or the investment that can satisfy this growth rate. Because the more money you spend on your investment, the quicker you'll retire, or the richer you'll become is the other option. So the only two ways, if you want to retire early, you either need to pay off all your debt and then invest that amount to get your growth rate quicker, or you need to take the responsibility to learn how to get a growth rate of more than 69%. So Warren Buffett says risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Now, how can you save more than 200,000 Rand on a property by not earning a cent more? So I'm going to show you a valuable tip on how you can save more than 200,000 Rand on a property by not earning a cent more. So just a disclaimer, you must be able to do the calculation before you act. So before you do anything, even though I'm showing you this calculation, please do the calculation because the calculation will differ in each scenario. You cannot go in blindly, and you need to consider your goals and your current situation. And you must compare how it will affect. Okay, this won't affect your pension, but there are other ways where you can use certain money where it will affect your pension. But let me show you what happens if you just structure your finances differently. So with the property example, if you make an immediate payment, so what an immediate payment is. So when you purchase a property, the property will be transferred into your name. Now, instead of making your first monthly payment at the end of the month, make your first payment the day that the property is transferred in your name. And if you do that immediate payment of 10,866 rand, so your first monthly payment you pay immediately, then you'll save 390,000 rand on interest just because you made your first payment on the first day that the property was registered in your name. Do you understand? So I want to show you. You will also be paying off your property within month 362. 326, sorry. 326, which means 3 years you'll be done 3 years quicker. So we only pay it for 27 years. Just by paying your first installment when the property is registered in your name. So property, I hope you get what I'm trying to say there. I hope everybody understands what I do want to show that calculation, I think, just again, and just explain it again. See, when you purchase a property, that property gets transferred into your name. Now, most people wait to pay that first payment at the end of the month when the payment is due. But if you make that payment immediately, if you make an immediate payment, it saves you almost 400,000 rand, and that's money you would have spent, you would have given to the bank, but all of a sudden that money is in your pocket. Another benefit from doing this money you get tax free because you don't pay tax on paying off your interest. So property as an investment. Now property has 27 variables that make it a good or a bad investment. So do not purchase a property if you do not understand all the 27 variables, especially, and I want to do this, especially if you purchase a property as an investment. You shouldn't purchase a property if you don't understand these 27 variables. So let me show you, or let's take a look at how one of them influences your financial well-being, and that is the interest rate. I want to show you how the interest rate influences your financial well-being. Firstly, you need to be able to calculate the worst case scenario because interest rates in South Africa has been as high as 25%. So what sometimes happen when people don't calculate what the worst case is, it could happen that the interest rates go back to 25%. And you need to be covered for at least a year. But just look at what this property repayment will be if the interest rates jump to 25%. So if your interest rates go up to 25%, you'll need to pay 20,845. And this is one of the reasons I want people to get out of debt as soon as possible, because this is possible to happen because it has happened in the past. And the more debt you have, the more you'll be in financial ruin. Because if all your interest rates go up this much, you won't be able to pay all of your debt. What was the 12.75. Now another way, and this is another way you can, what I call it, a surplus. You need to find a surplus in order to pay off all your debt. Now, a surplus is money that you are not using for your normal expenses like insurance, electricity, food. So, a surplus is money that is left over after you've spent all your money on what you have to. So, say you have a 12.75% interest, and say, for instance, I can decrease your interest rate by 1%. So your current monthly payment is 10,866. If you decrease your interest rate, your monthly installment is 10,094, which means there's a difference of 772 Rand. So if you negotiate with your bank, or if you ask me to get you a lower interest rate, and I can get you a 1% lower interest rate, you will score a 772 Rand on your monthly repayment. But just look what happens if you use that 772 Rand to pay off your debt quicker. So if you use that 772 Rand, you will save 1 million in interest, and you will save 10 years of your 30-year term just by negotiating a better interest rate and using that money that you've been used to paying to pay off your bond quicker. So this is the reason why I also want people to understand and do the calculation so that they can get out of debt quicker. So what does school cost? So a private school in South Africa, and this is one of the most expensive schools, costs 199,650 Rand per annum. But none of these private schools, none of the schools I went to, taught me any of the stuff that I've taught you today. What I've taught you, by doing the calculation, by applying certain principles, you can save more than 390,000 Rand, for instance, by paying your first installment on the day of transfer. But nobody has ever taught me in my schooling history, or even varsity, they taught me to do these calculations. And when I realized that I had to understand the problem and I had to understand the risk involved, I understood that I needed to make debt because I wanted this course to teach me how to get out of debt, how to purchase a property. So I had to spend 25,000 Rand, and I made a loan, and I had to make a loan in order to learn what I'm teaching you here today. But what it allowed me to do, it allowed me to purchase my first property, and it allowed me to have a property that satisfied my personal growth rate, which means that property will help me retire quicker one day. But the property also cost me nothing because I implemented what I've learned in the session. Now, the personal growth rate I showed you, it's the 69%. It's the percentage at which your investment should grow in order to help you achieve retirement. And I did the calculation at the time, and I told myself that will be if I um, have a loan of 25,000 Rand and I need to pay 673 Rand per month. If I can get a growth on my investment of 60%, then I can pay within 3 years that loan twice over. And that made me decide I'm going to make the loan because the value of the information, if I apply it, would be much more valuable than me taking a loan of 25,000 Rand. Now, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Now, I have a special offer for all of you that stayed for the full. How long has it been? Has it been an hour? Been almost an hour, and I'll answer any questions if you still have any. But I'm willing to teach you step by step how to pay off all your debt, house including car, within 3 to 7 years. I have all these spreadsheets. I call it a debt slayer calculator spreadsheets, and I have this personal growth rate calculator spreadsheet because I've realized most people don't know how to do these calculations. So I created these. I also have a cheat sheet where you can find money leaks like the sorry, my mic switched off. I also have a surplus finding cheat sheet where I can show you how to get money just like the interest rate calculation, which I showed you, where you can save. So there's 20 more ways and hidden money leaks where you're paying more than you need to. I'm also going to provide all of you with a virtual consultation. And if you want the solution to the GPF, we can discuss that. And there's two books that I'm going to provide you that I've also read that have been of great assistance. And I have a weekly webinar like this. We discuss a lot of different topics, and I ask normally all my clients to give me some thing to speak about, and then we discuss, and I can answer all of your questions also in that session. Now, normally this would cost 13,700 Rand. Because if you look at all the individual costs of the books, of the course, of the calculators, and if you add them up, it costs 13,700 Rand. The normal price that I ask is 3,500, 495. But the discounted price for today, because you've sat through this whole hour, is 997 Rand. Now, the total that you can possibly save if you have a property is more than 1.7 million. So if you have a property and you have a vehicle and you have debt, this is the total amount of interest that you can save by applying all these principles. And if you do that calculation, the growth on your investment, if you spend a 997 Rand and you make a growth of 1.7 million, you have a 178,000% growth on investment, which you won't get by going to a private school. But there's more. So all of you will receive these two ebooks for free and also a consultation. Because normally I charge 1,200 Rand for this, but all of you, I'll send an email. And if you would like, we can have a consultation and we can discuss your finances and I can assist you. I will there will be an end to this consultation. I won't have it indefinitely, so please book and arrange so that you make use of it. If you only want the calculators and that cheat sheet to find money where you don't know where your money is leaking, I'll add those two and I'll add all the rest. I'll add a consultation and I'll add the ebooks and I'll add that cheat sheet. Is a book to show you where your money is leaking. And I'll add that growth calculator and I'll only ask 495 Rand. Normally I ask 1,600. You'll see there's levels to this. So if you are grade 1, you can take the grade 1 level. If you think, but I need a grade 2, and you can have level 2. And if you are in matric, then I'll add all of the Debt Slayer course tools. I'll give you the training. I'll give you the one-on-one. You'll be invited to the weekly exclusive webinar. You'll be part of that team or of that group. I'll give you all the calculators, all the cheat sheets. I'll give you all the ebooks, and I'll give you 2 1-hour consultations within this, and I'll assist you get out of debt as soon as possible. And for that, I'll ask 997 Rand, and it's normally 4,400. Any questions? I believe I should have everybody's email address. Otherwise, I'm going to leave my email address in the chat box if you also want to email myself for any information or if I don't get back to you to it. Are you going to share the rates with us? I'm going to send it via email. I just hope that all your email addresses were saved on my MS Teams. So I'll send everybody that joined tonight an email just as a recap. And would you like me to make this session available for you again to rewatch? That's one question I want to ask. And the other question that I really want to ask is if you found this valuable. If you found this valuable, please say something in the chat or give me a reaction so that I know I can keep having webinars like this in the future. Very valuable. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Junita. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Is there no questions? There's people typing. Okay, I'll send the recording to everybody and also the rates that's involved. And there's going to be an end date. I'll decide when the special offer ends. And the only reason why it's a special offer is because the video course is not done yet. So I have a debt eradication, paying off your debt course, a video course. But currently I'm doing it on a one-on-one and on a webinar basis. But I'll put it as soon as it is a video course, then the price will increase to the solutions and to the assistance. Byron, yes, the session at work was not as in depth as this. Thank you for that positive feedback, better understanding of the two-pot. Another thing that I can maybe add when it comes to the two-pot is that your amount that you can withdraw, the 30,000, although it's capped, it is capped per pension. So if you have two annuities and a pension fund, you can have 30,000 Rand from each of those. Just as a another tip that I forgot to mention. And another thing of the two pot, please, if you do decide to withdraw from the two pot, please let me assist you with doing the calculation. Please do the calculation. I ask you first, and remember, it's probably going to take 1 to 2 months, probably 2 months before you receive the money, because there's going to be a backlog, and this is so new to all the parties involved. Thank you, Byron, for that positive feedback. Thanks, Rowan. Great presentation and very informative. Rates recording, please. Okay, I will do so. Adrian, I will send it to you. Thank you for being here. I do appreciate each and every one for being here. This is the reason why I'm doing it, to provide as much value as possible to as much people as possible. Thanks, Adrian. I will send it. I will send it. Another one typing. I'm going to stay here till all your questions are answered. Don't worry. I'm only going to leave once all your questions are answered. Just write down the email address. Very enlightening, and thank you very much. Thank you, Johnson. I'm not sure if it's Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Or if it's a Mrs. Johnson. So look out for my future webinars. I'll have future ones as well. Maybe I'll go deeper. If anybody would like to maybe just mention something you would really like to know, then I can get together another webinar that discusses that. So if anybody wants maybe to know something finance related, just mention it in the chat and I'll be sure to add it on our next session, and I'll add you to the email list as well. Pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. There's still more questions coming. I'm here all night. All night if you want me to be. Dankie Rowan, verstaan bietjie beter nou. Ek is bly as daar enige nog vrae is en julle weet wie ek is, voel vry om te vra. Ja, maar ek kyk nou af, maar is omdat julle gesigte daaronder is, julle chat. Kom ek sit die chat hierbo. Dan lyk ek kyk in julle oë. Have a great evening. Thank you. If there's no more questions, I'm going to give 10 seconds. If there's nobody left, then I do appreciate changing jobs. No problem, Byron. Byron, you can message me on either Facebook, but I do have your email. You can just let me know if you want to discuss anything. It's true. Economy and corporate police can set you back years. True, true. But have a wonderful evening and thank you for joining me. I do appreciate each and every one of you. Take care and until our next session. Okay, Cecil. Is nog iets wat hy wil sê? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.